I'm new to actually posting on Reddit. I normally just read, so I apologize if I'm not posting to the correct place. But this happened 7 years ago while I was living in a small town in Illinois. My youngest was only a few weeks old, so I was frequently having to wake up to feed him. So I ended up just sleeping downstairs, while my husband and 2 older children slept upstairs. I was woken up to someone knocking on the door. I was half asleep and my only thought was getting to the door before it woke everyone else up. I was so sleep deprived, I definitely wasn't thinking straight. Otherwise, I never would have answered that door, especially so late at night. As I was heading to get it, my baby started to wake up, so I brought him with me. I opened up the door and there's a man standing there. I said, "How can I help you?" He just stands there for a second and doesn't say anything. At this point, I'm starting to finally wake up and enough to be observant and realize what's going on. I remember feeling like he seemed nervous, which made me nervous. All he said was,
"I'm sorry, I thought you ordered a pizza."
He then grabbed a box off the table off the porch and just walked away. I don't remember what was even said to him. Just closed the door and stood there feeling a bit strange, thinking about how weird that was. But then I told myself maybe he just had the wrong house. As I'm walking back into the living room, I saw the clock and my stomach dropped. It was a little after 2 a.m. There's no places around here that deliver that late. I went back to look outside, but I didn't see anyone, and there were no cars on the street. I made sure all the doors were locked. I just remember sitting there a little shaken, thinking about how weird that situation felt. Normally the pizza guy would just greet you and then tell you how much you owe. And all he said was, "I'm sorry, I thought you ordered a pizza." The box was not with him. I didn't see it until he grabbed it up off the table. The table was a few feet away from the door. If he had actually been holding it, I probably wouldn't even have asked him how I could help him. I would have just said, "Hey, this is the wrong house" or something. I also don't remember him wearing anything associated with any pizza place around here, or even a name tag. The only place nearby was a Pizza Hut, and this would have been around March or April, so it's possible he had a jacket on, but I don't really remember. But again, nothing was open that late, I'm sure about that. The nervous vibe I got from him still tells me something was off. What was he doing? And if he had bad intentions, I think he either saw that I had dogs, or maybe the baby changed his mind. Whenever I think about this, I get chills. I'm lucky nothing actually happened that night. When I was in college, I got a job delivering pizzas late at night. Typically, I would work until around 2 a.m. It was a shitty job, and the shop itself was extremely dirty, unsanitary, and falling apart. But I actually made really good tips, so it made it kind of worth it. I'm female and I was 19 at the time. It was a summer in Colorado, so even at night it's still fairly warm. This is important detail for later. This was only my second weekend on the job, and I was still getting used to it. I also need to note that I'm already a paranoid person, so I prefer just dropping off the pizza, taking my tip, and then leaving right away for the next delivery. I would never go inside a person's house, and if I did, it was just to step inside really quick, but leave the door itself open. It was pretty close to midnight when I got another delivery to a house on the east side of town. It was supposed to be my last delivery of the night. I pulled up to the house and looked pretty normal from the outside. The street was really dark and I didn't feel uncomfortable. I walked up to the door and knocked. This big, shirtless dude with a beer belly answers the door and tells me to come inside. I get weird vibes immediately off of him, and I declined to come in and just tried to give him his pizza right there. But then he goes,
Come inside. It's freezing out. We don't want the cold air coming in."
This didn't make sense to me. It's summer. So stupidly I get nervous and take one step inside. Not going all the way in though. He then says,
"No, come all the way in. It's cold out."
I should have left at this point, but I was freaking out and not thinking straight. So I went in, and he closed both the screen door and the main door behind me. I'm trying to calm myself down and telling myself, okay, you're just overreacting. He then yells to his wife that the pizza's here. I can see her in the kitchen cooking, which seemed weird that she ordered a pizza and was also cooking, but I don't know. I look around their living room and it's filled to the brim with stuffed animals, completely covering the couches, the tables, windowsills, everything. It's just added to the really weird vibe. Then his wife comes into the living room holding something outstretched in her hand. She walks up to me and I see that it's some kind of bread or cake, and then she says,
"Eat this banana bread. Oh, don't worry, it's not poisonous."
I try politely to decline, lying and saying I'm on a diet. She just glares at me, still with her hand outstretched, waiting for me to take the bread. I do not take it. She then gets really upset and starts yelling at me to eat the bread. Again, I decline. But this time, I'm not trying to be polite about it and tell the couple that I really gotta get going and get back to work. And I'm still holding the pizza too, and thinking about just running out the door at this point. She finally gives up on trying to make me eat that bread and then walks back into the kitchen. Then the man is like,
"Let me find some change for your tip."
He starts looking all around the living room, digging through the couch cushions, trying to find the change to give me. I tell him, look, just forget it. I don't need the tip, and he can just take the pizza. But he insists on finding a tip for me. He then spends the next several minutes searching his stuffed animal infested living room for small change. I start to think to myself that they're trying to just stall me. Most people have the tip ready when I get to their house. I'm so worked up at this point that I just tell the dude I'm leaving and start to open the door. He took his pizza and gave me a few quarters that he had found. I booked it out of there and went back to the shop. When I got back, I told my supervisor what happened, and he didn't seem to care at all. He just sent me on another delivery. I was pissed. I don't know if that couple was actually creepy or just really socially awkward, but I never delivered to that house ever again.
This happened over 2 years ago, at the end of my first year of university. I'm a female. At the time, I was 21. My university is in a very large city, and I was living in university accommodation, a short walk from the main campus. My flatmates had all finished their exams and had gone home for the summer, so I was alone in my flat. I was pretty stressed because I was in the middle of my first round of university exams. I decided that it wouldn't be prudent to waste any precious study time cooking, so I ordered a pizza from a very large pizza chain. It was about 8:30 in the evening when my pizza arrived, so it was on the verge of getting dark. My block of flats had a key card entry system, so the pizza delivery guy couldn't come right up to my door. I saw his car pull up outside, and I went downstairs to get my pizza. The delivery guy stepped out of his car and walked over. He was tall and stocky, and looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s. He handed me the pizza box and I said thanks, and made to walk away. The delivery guy, however, had other ideas. "You're very pretty," he said. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I said, "Thanks." And then most disconcertingly, he said, "Are you home alone?" This set off my creep alarm straight away, so I told him I wasn't. However, my order was clearly meant for one person, and I was in a large deserted block of flats at the very end of the school year, so he could have deduced pretty easily that I was lying. I was thoroughly creeped out at this point, so I turned around to walk back to the door of my flat block. As I walked away, he wolf whistled and called after me, "Wow, nice ass." As I walked up the steps, he continued to whistle and whoop, and general be as inappropriate as possible. Needless to say, I closed and locked the door of the block of flats, and then the door of my flat, and then the door of my room. Had this happened more recently, I would have called the pizza place right away to report the incident. At the time, though, I wasn't in the best state of mind, so I ate my pizza and put the whole incident to the back of my mind. I felt pretty uneasy about the fact that this guy knew where I lived. Moreover, the other residents of my flat block were known to let strangers in, which made me even more uneasy. The next few days passed without incident, and I finished my exams and went back to my parents' house for the summer. When I arrived home, I decided that I ought to call the pizza place to report their creepy employee. I did, and the young woman who answered the phone sounded horrified when I explained the situation to her, and immediately gave the phone to her manager. He took the details of my order and apologized. I never heard anything back from the pizza place, but I hope they have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to their employees creeping on customers. It's a lot of people's favorite sound. The banging on the front door, letting you know that the pizza has finally arrived. There's something about hot delivered pizza that really ties a bow on any evening, especially when it accompanies a movie in a blanket. I jogged over to the door and grabbed the cash off the counter that I'd already laid out. I opened the door and couldn't help but be taken aback. The disheveled, skinny pizza delivery man was not a welcoming sight as they normally would be. His unkempt hair and obviously dirty clothes gave me an immediate feeling of uneasiness. The acne and sores dotting his pale face, and arms resembled the pizza I was previously so hungry for. I caught myself wearing a distasteful scowl as I stared at the man's pale face. "Oh," I said, after a few awkward and silent moments. "Here." I held out my hand with the 2 bills in it. The delivery man didn't immediately react to my offering of the money. He didn't do anything but continue to stare. His gaze was almost one that was looking through me. He seemed like he didn't notice me or my outstretched hand. I attempted to wave my hand a bit higher to pass in front of his lifeless eyes. He still had no reaction. My uneasiness quickly turned to dread. He had not moved the entire time. He just kept standing there, staring blankly. He didn't even look like he was breathing. Finally, his eyes darted towards my hand. I couldn't tell whether he was looking at the cash or the wedding ring on my hand. I was happy that the ring signified to the man that I had a husband, but his appearance made it easy for me to peg him as an addict of some kind. The foul stench emanating from his body added to my worry. I waved my hand again and cleared my throat. I was about to slip back into the house without any exchange when he finally began to opening up the warming bag. I felt slightly less uncomfortable for that moment. As he reached in the bag, he said in a very quiet voice, "Are you all alone out here?" I tried my best not to seem frightened by his demeanor or his question. I quickly answered, "Oh my gosh, no, I live with my husband." The man had the pizza halfway out of the warming bag when he stopped and immediately followed my response with another question. "Is he here now?" It was at this point my fear mixed in with a slight dose of panic. My thoughts began to race of what might happen next. Why was I in this situation? Am I really about to be raped? Maybe killed? "Yes, of course he's here," I said. I felt my face begin to flush. I was a terrible liar under normal circumstances, and I know what I just said sounded extremely unconvincing. The dim porch light revealed a slight smirk on the man's face. The odd smile told me that he didn't believe me and that he was fully aware of how terrified I was. I opened my hand to show that I was trying to give him the money. "Please," I said. I must have sounded so pathetic when I said that. It was almost as if I was begging for him not to hurt me. He gave a small laugh through his nose and pulled the pizza the rest of the way out of the bag. I grabbed the box, dropped the money onto the ground without even waiting for him to grab it. I slid the box in the house and closed the door, locking it immediately. My heart was pounding and I was breathing heavily. I was really glad to have that door closed. I stood at the door listening for him to walk away. After a minute, it was obvious that he hadn't even taken a single step. He was still standing in that exact spot. We were both standing mere 2 feet from one another, only separated by a door. I knew that he could tell that I also hadn't moved. For what seemed like an eternity, I actually finally heard him walk away from the door, down the 2 wooden steps, and onto the walkway. I sighed in relief. My heart was still pounding, but I had calmed down immensely. I walked over to the living room and set the pizza on the coffee table. I sat back on the couch and I was no longer hungry. I certainly was not in the mood to watch a scary movie. I didn't even have a moment to think about what I was going to do when I heard footsteps walking across the deck. Anybody walking across that deck would be able to see into the house directly where I was sitting. My anxiety levels began to climb again. 3 loud knocks startled me so much that I let out a small scream. I clutched my chest and yelled, "What? What do you want?" The aggressive manner of the knocking scared the hell out of me. The person outside the door was well aware that I was sitting in the same room. He didn't need to knock that loud. I yelled again in a trembly voice. What? What do you want? You forgot your drink. Your single drink. He spoke as if his mouth was pressed to the crack of the door. Honey, I yelled in an awful attempt to scare him off. Can you get the door, babe? Again, I was immediately reminded of how bad of a liar I was. The acting job would have not convinced anybody. Just leave it at the doorstep, I yelled. My voice cracked as I said that, and I began to cry. Please, just go, I cried out. I was trying to hold my breath and listen to what he was doing. He finally walked off the deck again. I sat there trying to be quiet as possible, hoping I would hear him drive away. I hated that he could see me. He could see exactly where I was sitting, and that I was crying. I was trembling and I was afraid to move. All I could do was wait. So I waited. After almost 5 agonizing minutes, I finally heard his car start, and I gasped in relief. I still didn't want to get up and look out the window. I didn't want that man looking at me anymore. I just wanted him gone. I could hear the car still in the driveway. It was just sitting idle. The man was not leaving. He was just sitting there. The quick sense of relief that I had felt had now vanished. Again, I was right back in the grip of fear. I wanted to call the police. There were 2 phones in the house. The closest one was in the kitchen just to my right. He would be able to see me if I went in there. He would be able to watch my every move. The other phone was upstairs in our bedroom. I spent the next minute mustering up any kind of courage to get off the couch and run up to the bedroom. It was on the opposite side of the house, and I feared not being able to hear the man or his whereabouts. It was when he started revving the engine in his car that I sprang up from the couch and ran up the stairs. I ran down the hall and into my bedroom, slammed and locked my door. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? Yeah, I need help. There's a man here. He won't leave. Are you hurt, ma'am? Is this man hurting you? No, he won't leave. He's sitting in my driveway in his vehicle. Is this your husband or a boyfriend? No, he's a pizza delivery man. There's something wrong with him. A pizza delivery man? What's wrong with him? Has he hurt you? Do you need an ambulance? No, listen to me. This guy, he's strange. There's something wrong with him. He won't leave me alone. Has this man threatened you? No, he's just creepy. He keeps asking me strange questions and he won't leave. I would like you to send an officer, please. Okay, ma'am. We're dispatching an officer to your location. I'm showing 2356 Walker Road. Yes, that's it. Please hurry. The operator started to say something, but my attention was stolen when I heard something. It sounded as if there was someone in my house. I froze. I was too scared to even speak into the receiver of the phone. I placed my thumb over the phone speaker so I could listen more intently. I held my breath and tried to pinpoint any disturbance in the silence. After a few long minutes of not hearing anything, I checked the phone to find out the 911 operator had hung up. I slowly and quietly hung up the phone and walked toward the edge of my room to listen through the door. Nothing. Still nothing. I opened up the door and listened down the hallway. Still nothing. I walked across the hall into the adjacent room. I looked out the window into the driveway and was relieved to see that the headlights were gone. I let out another long breath of relief. Although a lot of my anxiety had been slightly lifted, I was still on edge and weary of the whole situation. I was glad to know a police officer was on the way. I walked back down the stairs and into the living room. The smell of pizza had overtaken the room and reminded me of my original plan. Normally, it would have been a pleasant smell, but it only reminded me of that disgusting man and his bloody, blotchy skin. I sat back down on the couch and decided to wait for the police officer to arrive. Not a few seconds had passed when I heard the door handle trying to turn. I hadn't heard anybody walking on the deck, and I certainly didn't hear any cars pull into the driveway. I jumped up with my heart pounding again, and I slowly walked over to the wall and flicked off the lights. Now that the interior lights were off, I could see it out into the front. To my horror, I could see that the man's car was still parked in the driveway. I had mistook his headlights being off for the car not being there. 3 bone-shaking knocks sounded as I made me yell. "Who is it? What do you want?" 3 more aggressive knocks echoed through the house. My heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. The man began to knock on the door in a steady beat, seeming to get louder and louder with each hit. When it sounded like the door was about to come off the hinges, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Go away!" The man stopped beating on the door and it fell silent. All I could hear was my heavy breathing, and I could feel my heart beating throughout my entire body. "Open the door," the man said. That menacing tone that he used brought me back to tears. "No, please go away. The police are on the way," I cried out in the darkness. "The police?" He paused for a long while. "It's probably going to take them a long time to get here, don't you think?" "I think it's just going to be me and you," he said with a laugh. "They said there was an officer close by. He will be here any second." I had begun to sound almost hysterical. I knew the man on the other side of the door could hear the fear in my voice. "Just open the fucking door." "No, go away," I cried, tears pouring down my face as I begged the man to leave. "Okay then, fine. I'll leave you alone for now. Enjoy your pizza, Christine." Hearing the deranged man use my name made my stomach turn. I heard the man slowly walk down the deck. With the lights being off, I could see his silhouette walk by the window. I watched the man move down the walkway and slowly get into his car. I heard his car start and onto the main road. The car sat in the road for a whole minute. I watched and prayed for him to leave. Eventually the car started to move and he drove down the road out of my sight. Again, I let out a large sigh of relief. I couldn't believe how afraid I had just been. The entire ordeal had seemed like a terrible dream. Knowing that the officer was on his way was very comforting to me. I don't think I would have ever felt comfortable at all if that wasn't the case. Seeing a friendly face, a protector, a person of authority would do me good. I sat there in darkness for a long time. It seemed like it was taking the police officer forever to arrive. I had a lot of time to think. The fear that I had been experiencing over the last 20 minutes had begun to morph into anger. I was angry at that creep. I was so completely unsettled now that he had ruined my evening. Was I now fearful of being in my own house? Why did he have to say something like that? I decided to call the pizza place and complain about him. I grabbed the phone off the kitchen and called the number. "Can I speak to a manager, please?" I asked. After a few seconds, the manager picked up the phone and I began. "Hi, my name is Christine. I had ordered a delivery from you guys about an hour ago." The manager cut me off and asked, "Do you live down Walker, ma'am?" "Yes, Walker Road." "Ma'am, I am terribly sorry. I just received a call from another customer in your area. They have not received their pizza yet either. Something may have happened to our driver. We'd be happy to send out another one as soon as possible." "No, I did receive my pizza. He arrived 20 minutes ago and he threatened me." "Oh, that's strange. Can you tell me what happened?" "He's a fucking creep. He was awful. He was trying to scare me." "Who the hell do you have working for you, and who the hell is this creep?" "He? I'm confused." "Yes, the delivery man that you sent here." "Ma'am, the driver who went out to your area was Tiffany, short, blonde, and female." I felt like a dagger had pierced me right through the heart. The adrenaline that pumped through my veins almost blinded me. The manager was still sitting there speaking to me on the end of the phone, but I couldn't hear a single word. The amount of thoughts going through my head had begun to make me dizzy. I felt like fainting, and I felt like throwing up. I heard a car pull up in the driveway. For a moment I feared that it was the same driver, but as the car pulled closer, I could see that it was a police car. I cut the manager off on the other end of the phone. I don't know what's going on, but the police are here now." I hung up the phone and went to the front door to meet the cop in the driveway. I ran to the car just as the officer was getting out. "Oh, thank God you were here. I just called the pizza place and there's something wrong." The officer closed his door and walked around to meet me at the front end of his cruiser. I was so relieved that I ran into his arms and began to cry. "Oh my God, thank you, thank you. The pizza got..." As I hugged my savior, I noticed the same foul stench that I'd smelled earlier. His uniform was fitting far too large for his skinny body. I backed up off his chest and noticed the sores covering his arms, which had begun to tighten around me.
Our official merch store is finally here. If you want to support more of our channel, check out our merch shop. The link is in the description down below. See you on the next video.